meeting of India section. Today, Vimalji will be continuing her presentation on the book, The Inner Life of Krishnamurti, Part 3, written by Writer-Aryal Sanat. First, we will invoke the universal prayer. Oh, hidden life, vibrant in every atom. Oh, hidden light, shining in every creature. Oh, hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Now I want to introduce Vimalji. Although all the senior members know about her, but for new members, I would like to introduce her. Sister Vimalji is an architect and artist and a member of Adyar Lodge, Chennai since 2010. She briefly volunteered at the TS Library and Bookshop. She has attended many School of Wisdom programs. She writes blogs and makes videos on her learning in Theosophy. She used to take groups on walks in the Theosophical Society before pandemic from 2015 to 2019. She started a special needs support center for families with differently abled or special children. I think she was the architect of life, and she is also a good orator. Now I request Vimalji, please enrich us by your discourse. Vimalji.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Sushma ji. So this is the last portion of this book that I'm trying to cover. Obviously, this book is dealing in too many topics, and it is impossible to cover everything in detail. So there will be only certain parts of the book that I can take up even in this third part. So the third part deals with K's spiritual experiences and how they affect the future of humanity. That is the third part. In the second part, we were looking at the reality of Lord Maitreya and masters in K's daily life. And before that, we looked into how the perennial philosophy and theosophy helped to bring up Krishnamurti in his life. So this third part is also going to be dealing with his teachings too. Now, in this, it is all Krishnamurti had many names for that higher consciousness that used to come to him, and one of them was the beloved. He used to call it the beloved. So in this context, this is the chapter's name, the beloved. It says in this book that Pupul Jaikar and her sister Nandini Mehta were present at one time when the process was going on, and this is what K said to Pupulji. I know what they are up to. I know when the limit of pain is reached, they will return. They know how much the body can stand. They are very careful with the body. They have burnt me so that there can be more emptiness. They want to see how much of him can come. So there are, before the 1960s, he wasn't talking so openly about the masters. When he's saying they, he's referring to the perennial teachers, the masters. And when he's saying him, it means the Lord Maitreya. So he's saying here that his brain itself is being burnt up in some way, and so that his conditioning is reduced and the consciousness of Maitreya can come through him. So I've just made a sort of image of what could be happening here, which is called overshadowing. Overshadowing is when, let's assume that there is this very large consciousness of Lord Maitreya. They say that the consciousness of the Lord Maitreya, according to K himself, said that the consciousness of Maitreya cannot come in the small body of K because it is as huge as the sky itself. So this large the Maitreya consciousness, when K is experiencing it, it's like it's overshadowing his own entire being, the being which is not just his physical being, but also his subtle bodies. So that is what is meant by overshadowing. Now, about this, Kay has many things to say. So, in one conversation with Mary Zimbalist, he says, Amma, that is Mrs. Besant, and Led Peter maintained that a bodhisattva was to manifest and they must find a body. The tradition of the avatar manifesting. The Buddha went through all that, the suffering, etc. Then threw it aside and became enlightened. What he taught was original, but he went through all that. But here is a freak who didn't go through any of it. Jesus may have been a freak too. The power must have washed over this body from the moment it was born. Why? How did it happen? A boy from a family that was nothing special. How did that boy happen to be there? Was it the power wanting to manifest that created the boy? Or was it that the power saw a Brahmanical family, an eighth child, and said, This is the boy? So here K is going into why was he chosen, and then he also goes into maybe Jesus too. The story is in our wisdom circles that Jesus was just an ordinary devotee, but then this overshadowing of the Maitreya consciousness came over him when he got this Christ consciousness, and then he was enlightened and started spreading those teachings. So K has been also speculating whether that same thing has happened to him, and it is said that that same thing happened to Krishna. The Lord Krishna too was Lord Maitreya, again overshadowing a person in 3000 BC when such a person existed, Lord Krishna. So this is his speculation on that. Now, why did K, all this he was telling his, people close to him, Pupul Jack, Mary Zimbalist, all these people, David Bohm, so many people, he was telling hints about all these things that was going inside him, but why did he not talk more openly about it? We've gone through it. Basically, he felt that the people would interpret whatever they, as per their conditioning, they would interpret whatever they want to think, they would twist facts about it, and they would interpret what the masters were, something which was very serious and sacred, they would interpret it in a very ordinary way. Another thing is, he thought that his silence on this matter was very important because he had to have a proper attitude of respect. Otherwise, it will all go away from him. He cannot be disrespectful to that thing that was happening inside him. So he had to be quiet about it. This also shows that it means a great deal to him. The fact that through him, the perennial teachers are still doing a mission to teach humanity and influence him through Lord Maitreya's consciousness. Now, in this context, HPB too, towards the end of her life, regretted the fact that the names of the masters had been made public by her. Now, between 1930s and 60s, we know that he did not talk much about it, but later on, he slowly started discussing. So, in a sort of public forum, for the first time in Australia in 1970, he said, all those things exist. There is thought transference. You know it, don't you? When you are very close to somebody, husband, wife, the wife hasn't to say something. You do it, or you think it immediate. There is immediate transference. There is also extrasensory perception. All kinds of powers, as you begin to investigate yourself deeply, all kinds of capacities come, so-called clairvoyance and other kinds of power. But a wise man puts aside all those because they are irrelevant. But people who want excitement, power, position, use those as a means of exploiting. A wise man avoids all this and moves away from all this. So, if you read the biographies of Krishnamurti, you know that even in the 1920s, he had powers of healing. When his brother started losing his eyesight, every day he would do this healing for his brother to regain. So that he had become very popular among the youngsters at that time. So these kinds of powers have been there along, and now he talks about it. This is very contrary to many of the things that he normally would be speaking, but he was starting to talk about it. So hence he was not against esotericism, but advocated change, that is mutation. Once there is no I, there is no one left to acquire powers. HPB 2 in the Key to Theosophy has said that being a true theosophist is a difficult undertaking, as the foremost rule of all is the entire renunciation of one's personality. The critical thinking, according to Blavatsky, is transformation. She said that seeking powers is dangerous not because they are exotic, but because it requires a promotion of me. She calls such a me-centric approach black magic and warned against it. There appears to be a gulf between the Theosophists and the admirers of Krishnamurti, but with both not accepting that there really was an esoteric side of K throughout his life. Thus, no contradiction really between the intent of Theosophy or K. Without transformation and just studying theosophy is of no use, as per HPB. And that is what Kate taught too, that a transformation of man is necessary. The only difference was HPB's course of transformation was for a limited circle of chelas or disciples, whereas with K, it was for the whole world. He opened the floodgates of HPB's system. And even today, I mean, as recently as 2020, our the present Theosophical Society has formed something called the mission statement. And in the mission statement, very clearly the word spiritual self transformation occurs. So it's and I have heard our president telling that when this mission statement, it's a 24-word mission statement, which says the mission is to serve humanity by cultivating an all ever deepening understanding and realization of the ageless wisdom, spiritual self transformation, and the unity of all life. So this 24-word definition, when those group of the executive council members, when they sat down and they formulated this, at that moment there was some kind of energy in the room. So it's not something that this aspect of self transformation is extremely part of what theosophy is all about. Now, there is one particular speech given in 1927 in Holland by Kay, which should be read very carefully according to the author. Kay called this energy various names, avoiding the word Maitreya, as he felt Maitreya was too concrete. He called it the presence, the benediction, that thing, the other, or often as it. In 1927 at Holland, he called it the beloved. In his talk, he said, I am going to be purposely vague because although I could quite easily make it definite, it is not my intention to do so. Because once you define a thing, it becomes dead. If you make a thing definite, at least that is what I maintain, you are trying to give an interpretation which, in the minds of the others, will take a definite form, and hence they will be bound by that form, from which they will have to liberate themselves. My beloved is the open skies, the flower, every human being. So this is of course a picture of of Nicholas Roerich's picture called the Maitreya. There is this beautiful image. So this is what I mean. If you look at Kay's way of looking at what he meant by Maitreya. Then Kay continues to say in the same speech, I have always in this life and perhaps in past lives desired one thing, to escape, to be beyond sorrow, beyond limitations, to discover my Guru, my beloved, which is your Guru and your beloved. The Guru, the beloved who exists in everybody, who exists under every common stone, in every blade of grass that is trodden upon. It has been my desire, my longing to become united with him, so that I should no longer feel that I was separate, no longer be a different entity with a separate self. When I was able to destroy that self utterly, I was able to unite myself with my beloved. Hence, because I have found my beloved, my truth, I want to give it to you. K and the TS. He also made it clear that what he was saying was not meant exclusively for Theosophists or for the members of the Order of the Star, but that he would be teaching the world at large. This strongly suggests his imminent break with the Theosophists was integral to the development of his work and was not necessarily a blanket criticism of them. He said of the people of the world, they want to see the living waters that flow under the bridge of human beings so that they can swim with those waters into the vast ocean. And what you are concerned with all the time is how you are going to interpret. You have not found the truth for yourselves. You are limiting, and yet you are trying to set other people. You are limited, and yet you are trying to set other people free. So actually, like, I mean, it's not that having the society is unimportant, because even much later, and according to theosophists, even now the masters are in touch with the theosophical society. But he had to be a teacher who could speak to the language of the world. He could not speak the esoteric language, because people will not then understand. Not everybody is going to read the books and go into that wisdom aspect and all. So his teachings was meant for the world. So that is how he looked at it. Now, there's another thing, that just towards the time when was dying, 10 days before he died, he said something very profound, and this has been quoted in many books and also in this book. He says, I was telling them this morning, for 70 years, that super energy, no, that immense energy, immense intelligence has been using this body. I don't think people realize what tremendous energy and intelligence went through this body. There's a 12 cylinder engine, and for 70 years was a pretty long time. Now the body can't stand anymore. Nobody, unless the body has been prepared very carefully, protected, and so on, nobody can understand what went through this body. Nobody. Don't anybody pretend. Nobody, I repeat this. Nobody amongst us or the public know what went on. I know they don't. And now, after 70 years, it has come to an end. Now that that intelligence and energy is somewhat here every day, and especially at night. And after 70 years, the body can't stand it. Can't stand anymore. It can't. You won't find another body like this, or that supreme intelligence operating in a body for many hundred years. You won't see it again. When he goes, it goes. There is no consciousness left behind of that consciousness, of that state. They'll all pretend or try to imagine they can get into touch with that. Perhaps they will somehow if they live the teachings, but nobody has done it. Nobody. And so that's that. So the Maitreya consciousness, I mean, the Maitreya is supposed to come in human form in the sixth root race, which is supposed to be a million years from now, not now. So this is where he is hinting that it's not going to come again for a very, very long time. So we have a lot of time in our hands to understand the teachings. He says that if you understand the teachings, perhaps you'll understand what's going on. So here, actually, what is there is the book goes into a lots of topics, and the I have picked out things which are connected to the teachings of Krishnamurti, because obviously there's so much, but I've taken a little bit, and then we'll be looking at some of the teachings of Krishnamurti. And if we have time, we will also go into something else, which if I have time, I will go into that part, which is where Pedro Oliveira has collected a lot of dialogues by Radha Burney and other people who spoken about Krishnamurti. So if we have time, I will go into that later. So now we will go into the Krishnamurti's teachings. Here we're looking at what is meditation. Krishnamurti says meditation is the awareness of fear, of the implications and the structure and the nature of pleasure, the understanding of oneself, and therefore laying the foundation of order, which is virtue, in which there is tremendous quality of discipline, which is not suppression, nor control, nor imitation. Such a mind then is in a state of meditation. You are in fact pursuing a method that promises a reward. You are in fact pursuing a method that promises a reward. And when you practice a method day after day, your mind obviously becomes mechanical. There's no freedom in it. A method implies that it is a way laid down by somebody who's supposed to know what he's doing. Now, here this word order is very important. There's an emphasis on the order of our mind and our emotions, and that is in all of us. And this order refers to a non-contradictory, non-second-hand nature in case teachings. What do you mean by second-hand? Which means somebody else defines what are the things one has to do, or how we have to be, what is the path for us, and we follow it. That is a second hand. But the first hand would be we ourselves come to our own conclusions on everything which matters to our lives, including our practices of meditation, etc. So the the thing called order has been found very valuable of the mind, and this has been proved scientifically also. Now, if you take, for example, ordinary conductor, and in an ordinary conductor, you place an electrical conductor near a magnet, okay, the magnetic lines will, on the left you see this is ordinary red thing is an ordinary conductor and there is a magnet. The magnetic lines will go through this ordinary conductor because the electrons are all haphazard. But if you take a superconductor, now this blue thing is a superconductor, that is at minus, I think, what, minus 274 degrees or something. If you take it at that temperature, that is a superconductor, which has all its electrons in a coherent fashion, then the magnetic lines do not go through that superconductor, but go around it. Now, the same thing, what scientists have found is happens to the brain as well. So when the brain, here this is called the Maharishi effect, which they find that if the brain is in order, then whatever are the external influences, they do not affect the brain. If whatever is the environment the person is in, if his brain is in perfect order, he will not be influenced by the magnetism which surrounds him. So this is the truth, and this is why he had so much emphasis on the word order. We can see the scientific reason for that. So keeping, now when you say order, order automatically means that you have formulated that order. That means you're not following somebody, you're not giving authority to somebody and following blindly, because in that following there is this element of fear, and wherever there is fear there is disorder. So it's a state of no fear, it's a state of clarity, it's a state of self knowledge, it's a state of complete oneness with oneself. So that is order. Now, let's go on to another teaching regularly, which he talked about, is on authority. He said, when we give a religious symbol, figure, or organization authority, we give up our own responsibility for what is in our lives and our actions. Instead, we learn to live in the state of awareness that is prescribed in the religion. There will be change in our pattern of, instead of that, if we learn to live in a state of awareness, then there will be a change in our pattern of thinking and acting. Adhering to predetermined patterns, that is exactly what conditioning is all about. And deeply felt identification with any pattern implies segregation from those who are not so identified. This is adversarial, violent attitude to have towards others, whether one knows them or not. Anyone who identifies with a particular organized religious group then is supporting fragmentation and conflict. A true morality must be based on unconditional respect for all human beings. So here again, this is also very important. This type of teaching actually, then one questions oneself of our role in of course in the Theosophical Society, and one really needs to be very careful on these aspects. When we are studying this, it requires a lot of self analysis to understand how much of dependence is there on the organization of Theosophical Society, how independent we are, and what is our role in this whole thing. Then the teaching on practices, for example, chanting, etc. He says, they said this, they bought mantra yoga from India, and you also have it in the Catholic world. Ave Maria, repeated 100 times. This is done on a rosary, and obviously, for the time being, quietens the mind. A dull mind can be made very quiet by the repetition of words, and it does have strange experiences. But those experiences are utterly meaningless. A shallow mind, a mind that is frightened, ambitious, greedy for truth, or for the wealth of this world, such a mind, however much it may repeat some so called sacred word, remains shallow. If you have understood yourself deeply, learnt about yourself through choiceless awareness, and have laid the foundations of righteousness, which is order, you are free and do not accept any so called spiritual authority whatsoever. So, obviously, one must accept certain laws of society. So, this is Krishnamurti's direct quote, and you can see very clearly where he is heading. He is saying that don't just now you're listening to me, now don't make me into the next Messiah, the next Guru. Just listen to the teachings, look at your own mind, and make yourself complete in yourself. So, that kind of a approach. Then there is some more about meditation. That is the daily practicing, the daily polishing, making your life into a routine so that gradually, ultimately, it may take 5, 10, or any number of years, you will be in a state to understand what truth is, what enlightenment and reality are, and so on. Quite obviously, no method can do that because method implies a practice, and a mind that practices something day after day becomes mechanical, loses its quality of sensitivity and its freshness. You cannot ever know the truth because it is a living thing, whereas a method, a path, laying down the steps to be taken in order to reach truth, as though truth is something that is fixed and permanent, tied down for your convenience. So again, he talks about having a fresh mind, and a very honest approach to oneself. Then on fragmentation, what does Casey on fragmentation? He says this dichotomy between what is and what should be, with it, with its inescapable implication of fear, K explored again and again over many decades. Let me read that again. This dichotomy between what is and what should be, with its inescapable implication of fear, K explored again and again over many decades. It is another instance of fragmentation. While such psychological divisions are burning inside a person, wholeness or true religiousness is not possible. That means what we are telling ourselves, that I am impure, I have to become something else. I am this, I have to become that. I have already separated myself between what I am now and what I will be in the future, and form these two images, and now this image is trying to become that image. But this is not the way, this is not the method at all. This breaking of ourselves, that is fragmenting ourselves, is not the way. Another thing he talked about is the false security of a group. The sense of false security that comes from identification with a group represents another recursive closed loop in the brain. Closed loops preclude wholeness. They provide an anchor for the me. So freedom from me, which is the signature of wholeness, becomes impossible. Criminal gangs would be an extreme example of this point. Corporate boards of directors and political bodies also meet as a group. Yet, this does not make them more sensitive to the needs of humanity or the planet. So, again, we have to be careful about this part. Just because we are in a group, which gives us a false sense of security, as if we are all on the right path, just because we are in a group, that is not the right thing. Because you're still then affirming that me. So, that's again something. Then about Maitreya, what does K say? The Maitreya cannot manifest. It would be like the sky manifesting. It is the teachings that manifest. K also states matter of factly that the boy Krishna had been prepared for the manifestation of the avatar. Here he makes no attempt to disconfirm the numerous statements in the book called The Years of Awakening, some of them in his own words, that he was the vehicle of Maitreya. So when Mary Lutyens wrote this book called The Years of Awakening, a lot of all this had been discussed, and many people were very contradicted by that, because he had not spoken of it earlier. And so this is where he has said that he totally accepts everything that is written in that book. Mary Lutyens' The Years of Awakening, which you see the cover of here, but there are many covers for that, had revealed the esoteric experiences of K. And in a meeting at Brockwood Park, someone commented the book raised a lot of questions and has caused a lot of confusion. While replying to this person, K said, that is a very ancient tradition about the Bodhisattva, that, that there is a state of consciousness, let me put it that way, which is the essence of compassion. And when the world is in chaos, that essence of compassion manifests itself. That is the whole idea behind the avatar and the bodhisattva. And there are various gradations, initiations, various masters, and so on. And also, there is an idea that when he manifests, all the others keep quiet. You understand? That essence of compassion has manifested at other times. Now, we've heard of this word self-transformation or mutation. Mutation calls for discipline. The discipline required for total mutation, however, calls for constant awareness, being constantly on the alert, constantly learning, constantly researching into that which is. Choiceless awareness can only take place in the context of mutation, which means what? A certain inner flexibility is required all the time. Unless one is, if one has formed rigid views, it becomes that mutation is impossible. Then one is stuck in one way. And then, of course, we go on taking births again and again to understand all the other ways that are possible. But if we stop being rigid in one way of being, one type of being, and just be in this state called choiceless awareness. So, even in this choiceless awareness, being in that state is a discipline, which is a focused way of being. Finally, we come to the last of these slides, and it looks like I do have time to go into something else. The core of the teaching of K is K states unambiguously that the most important thing is the transformation of our lives. He appeals to the fact finding faculty in us rather than to the me enhancing expectations of the dualistic brain cortex. So, again, we've just gone into that if we go on adding to this person called me, we will never be able to come anywhere near experiencing that fullness, that beloved, or that entire consciousness of that higher self, even of our own higher self, and then of higher self than that. So that is something that he has been talking about throughout his teachings. Now, I wanted to go to understand this whole aspect between theosophy and Krishnamurti and all the the conflicts and all that. So there is this article written by Pedro Oliveira, which talks about, which is the article is called 90 years of theosophical ripples, and here he talks about some points which are very important for us as theosophists to know regarding the historical background of K, because then you'll understand how to put K in your own mind as opposed to theosophy. So one point he says is, after Besant's death in September 1933, K's rooms in Adyar were locked and his clothes packed in suitcases and kept outside. When he had gone there, when he went there, he found his room was locked and his suitcases were kept outside. It was a forced departure. He was not, he was shown to him that he was not welcome then. Okay. Then Hodgson, that is Jeffrey Hodgson, was very annoyed that about K, and he spoke a lot against K because Hodgson himself was a very good speaker, and he was from Australia, New Zealand, but he used to speak all over Australia. And every time he spoke, he had new members who would come in. But K also used to go to Australia, and he would say things like question everything, and immediately the members would dwindle, the numbers would dwindle. So there was this anger between theosophists like Jeffrey Hodgson and people who were finding that the numbers in the society were reducing because of K. Then those who studied his teachings without prejudice have said that these are real theosophical, they are really theosophical in depth in what he says. He spoke about the need to see conditioning for what it is, the sacred unity of all life, nature as a vast regenerating process, and about the complete ending of thought and a boundless field of sacred silence. Another Tibetan Buddhist Lama, when Samdong Rinpoche once said to Pedro Oliveira in Sydney in 2001 that according to the Buddhist tradition, Maitreya Buddha will manifest in 1,000,000 years from now. But he said that between now and 1,000,000 years, there would be partial manifestations. When put the question, was Krishnamurti a partial manifestation? His answer was yes. Then a few more points are there which are interesting. The past president N. Sriram, who's well known to all of us, he says, I personally feel that there is an intimate connection between Krishnamurti and the great teacher, and also believe that the message which comes through him is put in form which is Krishnamurti's own, so that we did not think that every word is literally inspired as devout Christians think of the words in the Bible. I have a very great respect for Krishnamurti, and have also been influenced in my thoughts by what he says. Then Radha Bania, what does she say? She says, there is no question of Krishnamurti betraying the TS or the masters who instructed him. In the TS at that time, there was a group of people who claimed to have contact with the masters, who assumed authority for themselves. They believed they were in a position to declare, you have been put on probation, someone else has become a pupil of the master, or now you are an initiate. But it could be seen by the behavior of these people that they did not fulfill the qualifications which are described in Masters and the Path and other books about what a true disciple of the master or initiate would be like. So it became like a drama, a farce. And Krishnamurti disliked all this very much. I think the idea that he betrayed the masters is ridiculous. My personal opinion is that he was in constant touch with the masters. He knew far better what the masters were than most of the people who talked much about the masters and claimed to be their agents. According to Krishnaji, the mistake made in the TS at that time was that the sacred and holy was brought down to a personal and material level. Swami T. Subbarao objected even to HVB talking as much as she did about the masters because of the danger of degrading the concept of the masters. So that is what Radhaji said. Again, in these notes, it says, God is said to be made in the image of man. Similarly, people attribute to the masters what is familiar to themselves, but it has little to do with what they actually are. Very holy, pure, wise people. Madame Blavatsky also made it clear that those who want to contact the masters must rise to their level. It being impossible to bring them down to the worldly level. But the bringing down was what was happening. Krishna ji rejected the ideas about the masters, but not the existence of liberated ones. This is continuation of what Radhaji has said. So this also Radhaji has said. Then in 1924, in Adyar Day in Adyar, yeah, on 17th February, Krishnaji says this: I have visited many a wonderful land and seen many a famous sight, but there is none to equal the extraordinary, the intangible something of our Adyar. There is an atmosphere there which does not exist in many a church and temple, and there is a presence there that we expect to perceive in a sacred shrine. One can become either a god or a pitiful sinner at Adyar. It's a wondrous spot, and it must be maintained as though it was a holy temple. Adyar Day exists to remind the members of the glorious presence and urge them to do their best to make Adyar a worthy and dignified shrine for the masters. So, just going to stop now and open up for discussions. And I think my main aim was that we as theosophists, I mean, many of us, almost all of us read Krishnamurti and are inspired by him. And I think that idea that there is no separation between our society and the foundation, Krishnamurti Foundation, in terms of the philosophy and the purpose, that should be very clear. So I hope it was useful for you, this book study, and anybody has anything to say, please say. Thank you.
Thank you, Vimalji, for your in-depth and enlightening presentation on this book. Actually, this book is a research-based biography of J. Krishnamurti, inner life. And you have assimilated the essence of this book. We have benefited a lot by your presentation. I have seen the long bibliography in this book, and you have gone through all the parts of this book. Thank you so much. Now platform is open. Now platform is open for discussion. Thank you.
Shinde ji, I think you are here.
Yes, I am here, but I can't contribute anything now because I am in that Sangli.
Oh,
Connection is not proper.
okay. If anybody has anything to say is fine, because it's really interesting to hear your viewpoints.
Vimalji, I heard the new definition of beloved. You have quoted that beloved word includes each and everything of the universe. Beauty of nature, that is beauty of flower, beauty of animal and human being. This is the new definition of beloved. Yeah.
I actually find, in those who are researching Krishnamurti's teachings, there is this entire series by the foundation which is titled The Urgency of Change. And if you go through all of them, some 200 plus videos are there. Over time, if you start going through them, you will start getting what Krishnamurti is trying to say. So it's easier to go through that than reading. And in terms of reading, I think the one book which everybody should start with is a book on education. Krishnamurti on education. There is a book which he has written. Excellent book to understand what Krishnamurti is saying. So perhaps they're all saying the same thing, but Krishnamurti's language is very is something which anybody can get into. Like everybody can understand that language, because it is you don't need to have definitions. There are no words which people don't understand in that. The words are all clear, but the meaning sometimes is difficult to get through. So shall we close the meeting, Sushma-ji? I think.
Okay. Thank you, Vimalji, once again.
Vimalji,
Yes.
am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
When we study about the Krishnamurti, his language is simple, but to digest it is very difficult. So his statements are very, very clear. And when we bring it to the practicality, it goes very difficult. So many statements are there. And one statement he gave to the world, that three things are important. I don't know whether you in your talk you included it or not, but I have not heard you completely. I am connected just now. The number one, he said, we must be human concerned. How many of us really concerned about the sorrow of the humanity? So human concern is important to consider. Second point, he said, religious mind. The first human concern, then he said global concern, and third he said religious mind. Religious mind is the open mind, and global concern, we are already trying to have globalization, etc., etc. So he gave three important statements to the whole world. First, we must develop human concern, then global concern, and then the religious mind. All these are interconnected. Without the religious mind, we cannot develop human concern or global concern. So this is what his three important things to the whole world he has given with awareness. That is what I want to add in your this lecture, just for study.
Thank you, sir. That's very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, now I'm doing closing prayer. Asato ma sadgamaya तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा मृतम गमय. From the unreal lead us to the real, from darkness lead us to light, from death lead us to immortality. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dubhag bhave. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you each and everyone.
Thank you, Thank you, Vimal. Thank
Thank you. Thank you, Sushma ji. Thank you for staying for 3 weeks with me. Thank